Mara had always loved exploring old places. She liked to walk along quiet roads and visit abandoned buildings. She felt that these places held secrets, stories that the world had forgotten. One morning, as the sun was rising and painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink, Mara decided to drive to a scrapyard she had heard about. It was far from the town, near the edge of the hills where the air smelled of earth and rust. As she arrived, she saw piles of metal, broken machines, and scraps of old vehicles. The scrapyard looked like a chaotic museum of things people no longer wanted. Mara walked slowly, her eyes scanning every corner. Then something caught her attention. At the far end, behind a stack of broken car doors and metal sheets, was a train car. It was small, old, and completely rusty. Its green paint was peeling, and the windows were cracked. The wheels were buried in dirt. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Most people would have ignored it. They would have seen only rust, decay, and problems. But Mara felt a spark in her heart. She could see a story hidden in that rust. She imagined it shining, full of life again, a place where people could come and feel warmth and beauty. She walked closer, running her fingers along the rough metal. She could almost hear the train moving on tracks, carrying passengers who were excited or nervous about journeys long ago. Mara asked the owner of the scrapyard about it. The man, a tall, thin man with a rough beard, laughed. He said, "That old thing? Nobody wants it. It is just metal now. You can have it for $500, but good luck doing anything with it." Mara smiled. $500 was all she needed. She did not even hesitate. She gave the man the money and signed some papers. Then, with the help of a small team, she arranged for the train car to be moved to her backyard. As she watched, it being lifted onto a trailer, she felt excitement mixed with nervousness. She knew that transforming it would not be easy, but she also knew that it was possible. When the train car finally arrived at her home, it looked even smaller in her backyard. The wheels were stuck in the soft ground, and weeds had grown around it. Mara touched the rusty metal again and smiled. She felt a connection. She imagined sitting inside one day, surrounded by light, plants, and things that made people happy. The next morning, she went back to the train car with a notebook in her hand. She started sketching ideas. She drew shelves, seating, and small spaces for books and plants. She thought about how to make it cozy, warm, and full of life. Mara worked slowly, thinking about every detail. Even though it was old and broken, she believed it could become beautiful. Neighbors noticed Mara spending hours near the train car. Some of them came to her fence and shook their heads. "Why are you wasting your time and money on that old thing?" they asked. "It will never be anything good." Mara smiled politely. She did not argue. She knew that most people could not see what she could see. They could only see rust and decay. She could see possibilities, dreams waiting to happen. Each day, Mara worked a little more. She cleaned the area around the train car, removing weeds and rocks. She carried water in buckets to wash off dirt and rust. Sometimes the smell of rust was strong and her hands became rough, but she did not mind. She liked the work. It felt like she was bringing the train car back to life. She even found old newspapers under the floorboards. The papers were yellow and fragile. She read some of them and smiled at the stories of people long ago. They reminded her that this train car had once carried people with hopes, fears, and dreams. One evening, after a long day of cleaning, Mara sat on the small step at the entrance of the train car. She rested her hands on her knees and looked at the rusty walls. The sun was setting and golden light filled the yard. For a moment, Mara imagined the train car shining again. She imagined children laughing inside, families reading books together, and visitors leaving with happy hearts. The thought made her feel warm inside. She knew it would be hard to make it real, but she believed she could do it. Over the next few weeks, Mara continued her work. She found old tools at the scrapyard and some she borrowed from friends. She learned to use a brush to remove rust and how to seal metal to stop it from falling apart. Every day, she made small improvements. A broken window was replaced with glass she found in another old building. A weak panel was reinforced with wood. The train car was slowly becoming more solid, safer, and ready for her next steps. During this time, Mara also began talking to the train car. She gave it a name: Silver. The name came from the faded silver paint underneath the rust. She imagined that the train car had a soul, memories of journeys, and stories to tell. She would sit near Silver in the evenings and whisper her plans, telling it about the light, warmth, and comfort she wanted to create inside. It was silly perhaps, but Mara felt a deep bond. The train car seemed to respond to her care, and she promised herself that it would never remain forgotten again. One rainy afternoon, Mara discovered something unexpected. As she was cleaning the floor inside Silver, she noticed a small metal latch under a loose panel. Curious, she opened it and found a small dusty box. Inside were old letters tied with a ribbon and photographs of people who had traveled on the train many decades ago. Mara carefully touched each item. She felt a connection to these people, imagining their laughter, their stories, and their dreams. Some of the letters spoke of hope, others of sadness, but all of them were filled with human emotion. Mara realized that she now had a responsibility. She wanted to honor these stories and preserve them in the train car she was transforming. The next morning, Mara started cleaning the letters and photographs gently. She made small protective covers for them and decided to incorporate them into the design of the train car. Each item would have a place where visitors could see it and feel the history. Mara's excitement grew. Silver was no longer just a project. It was becoming a bridge between the past and the present. News of Mara's project began to spread. Some neighbors stopped by to watch, curious about what she was doing. Most still doubted it would turn into anything meaningful. Mara welcomed them to see the progress. She showed them sketches and explained her vision. Some started to smile, others shook their heads, but she did not mind. Mara knew that her belief in possibilities was stronger than anyone's doubt. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Mara's small backyard became a busy workshop. She painted, cleaned, repaired, and decorated. Every day, Silver began to look less like an abandoned train car and more like a place where life and stories could live. Mara also planted flowers around it and small trees to make the space feel alive. Birds began visiting, and small animals came to hide in the shade. The train car became part of the world again, no longer forgotten. By the end of the first season of her work, Mara stood back and looked at Silver. The sunlight reflected off the cleaned metal, the windows glowed, and the small garden around it was full of color. She felt proud, but she also felt that the best was yet to come. Inside, she would create a space that could inspire and move people. She would tell the stories of the letters and photographs. She would make Silver a place where emotions could be felt deeply. Mara knew that many challenges were still ahead. Transforming a rusty train car into a beautiful sanctuary would take time, patience, and care. But she also knew that she was capable. She had imagination, determination, and a vision. Most importantly, she had a belief that beauty could come from forgotten things, that stories could be revived, and that hearts could be touched. Mara smiled, touched the side of Silver gently, and whispered, "We will make you shine again." The sun set fully, leaving the yard bathed in twilight. Mara felt tired but happy. For the first time, she understood the true meaning of hope. Something old and forgotten could become a place of wonder. Something neglected could carry memories and dreams. And she, Mara, was the one who would bring it all back to life. Morning light filled the sky as Mara stepped into her backyard. The air was cool and a soft mist hung above the ground. The old train car, which she had named Silver, stood quietly in the middle of her yard. Rust still covered most of its metal, but there was a new kind of energy around it. The first stage of cleaning was over, and now came the real challenge: transformation. Mara put on her work gloves and tied her hair back. She looked at Silver and whispered, "Let us make you beautiful again." She began by studying the structure. Some areas were weak and a few panels had deep cracks. The floor inside was uneven and one corner smelled damp. Mara made notes in her small notebook, planning how to repair each part. Her first goal was to fix the outer body. She bought brushes, sandpaper, and special paint made for old metal. Every day she spent hours scraping rust and polishing surfaces. Her hands often became sore and dust covered her clothes, but she never lost patience. The sound of her tools against the metal echoed softly across the yard. As days passed, small changes began to appear. The dull metal started to shine faintly. The color of decay began to fade. Mara chose a calm shade of silver for the exterior, mixed with hints of green to remind her of the original paint. She painted slowly, stroke by stroke, until the train car looked alive again under the sunlight. Neighbors sometimes stopped to watch. One of them, an older man named Ben, leaned on the fence and smiled. "You really are giving that thing a new life," he said. "I thought it was impossible, but it looks better already." Mara smiled back. "Thank you, Ben. It still has a long way to go, but I can see the beauty inside it." Ben nodded. "It is good to see someone believe in old things again. People forget that everything once had a story." His words made Mara feel even more determined. She wanted silver to be more than a decoration. She wanted it to tell stories, to make people feel something. When the outer structure was finally stable, Mara moved to the inside. She opened the heavy door and stepped in. The air inside was still dusty, but sunlight came through the small windows, lighting up the space in golden rays. The wooden floor creaked under her feet. She had removed some damaged boards, and now she planned to replace them with new ones. Mara worked for hours, cutting and fitting wood panels. The smell of fresh wood mixed with the faint scent of old metal. She hummed softly as she worked, her hands steady and careful. Each nail she hammered felt like a heartbeat, bringing the train car closer to life. When the floor was complete, she decided to add insulation to keep the interior warm during cold nights. She learned how to install thin sheets of insulation and then covered them with smooth wooden panels. It was hard work, but she felt proud every time she finished a section. In the evenings, Mara would sit inside Silver, tired but happy. She would imagine how the place would look when finished. Shelves filled with books, soft lights glowing, and plants hanging near the windows. The image filled her heart with joy. One day, as she was cleaning the corners of the train car, she found an old metal tag attached to one of the walls. It had faded words engraved on it: "Train car number 47, made in 1932. Mara touched it gently and smiled. The number felt special. She decided to keep it as part of the design. It would remind everyone that Silver had lived through nearly a century of history. Mara also started working on the windows. Some were broken, while others were so dirty that they blocked the light. She replaced the broken glass with new panes and polished the old ones until they shone. She added thin curtains made of soft white fabric. When the wind blew, the curtains danced gently, making the space feel peaceful and alive. During her work, Mara often thought about the people who had once traveled in this train car. She wondered where they were going, what they were talking about, and what dreams they carried with them. She thought of the letters and photographs she had found hidden under the floor. Each picture showed faces full of life. She planned to place them in special frames and display them along the walls when the restoration was complete. Sometimes, when the work felt too hard, she would sit and read one of the letters. The handwriting was old-fashioned and elegant. One letter spoke about a family moving to a new town for a better future. Another talked about two friends saying goodbye at the station. The words were simple but full of emotion. Mara realized that these stories were what made Silver special. They gave it a soul. Weeks passed and the transformation continued. Mara added shelves along one side of the wall. She placed small glass jars filled with marbles, pebbles, and old coins she had found during cleaning. She also placed some of the old letters inside clear covers so visitors could read them without damaging them. She wanted the inside of Silver to tell a story, not just of the train car, but of everyone who had once been part of its journey. By mid-season, the inside of the train car had changed completely. The walls were smooth and freshly painted. The floor was clean and strong, and the windows shone with soft light. Mara placed a few small lamps inside, giving the space a golden glow at night. She also brought in a small table, a few wooden chairs, and soft cushions. The train car was slowly becoming what she had imagined, a place of peace, memory, and warmth. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky orange, Mara lit a small lamp inside Silver and sat quietly. She looked around at all the work she had done. It still needed more decoration, but it already felt alive. She whispered, "You are becoming beautiful, Silver." At that moment, she heard a faint creak from the roof. She looked up and smiled. The old structure still made sounds, but to her they felt like the train car was talking back. like it was thanking her for bringing it back to life. The next day, Mara decided to add a small garden around Silver. She planted flowers along the sides, sunflowers, daisies, and lavender. The air soon filled with a soft fragrance. She also placed small stones to create a path from her back door to the entrance of the train car. Now every time she walked toward Silver, it felt like she was entering another world. One afternoon, while Mara was painting the finishing touches near the door, a group of children from the neighborhood stopped by. They stood at the fence curious. One of them asked, "Miss Mara, is that your house?" Mara laughed softly. "Not exactly. It is something special. It used to be an old train car. I am turning it into a place where people can come, sit, and remember stories." The children looked excited. "Can we see it when it's done?" One of them asked. "Of course," Mara said with a smile. "When it is ready, I will invite everyone." Their eyes lit up and they ran back down the street talking excitedly. Mara felt happy. She wanted this place to bring joy, not just to her, but to everyone around her. That evening, Ben visited again. He looked around and said, "It is almost unrecognizable now. You did something magical, Mara." Mara smiled. "Thank you, Ben. I think Silver just needed someone to believe in it again." He nodded slowly. "Maybe that is true for people too." His words stayed in Mara's mind long after he left. She realized that this project was not just about rebuilding a train car. It was about showing that anything forgotten could shine again if given love and care. As night fell, Mara stood outside and looked at Silver under the moonlight. The metal reflected the pale light beautifully. The small garden around it looked peaceful, and the soft glow from the inside lamps made the whole place look magical. She felt tired but deeply content. Every nail she had hammered, every brushstroke she had made had been worth it. She knew the next step would be even more meaningful. Inside, she would bring stories to life. She would make sure that every visitor felt the emotions she felt: hope, warmth, and a quiet sense of wonder. Before going inside her house, Mara placed her hand gently on Silver's wall and whispered, "Tomorrow we start the heart of you." The night air was cool and a soft breeze rustled the trees. The train car stood silent, but to Mara it felt alive, like it was waiting for the next chapter. And deep in her heart, Mara knew that what she was creating was no longer just a project. It was becoming a message, a reminder that beauty and kindness could be found even in the most forgotten places. The morning sun rose over the hills, painting the town with shades of gold. Dew glistened on the leaves of the small garden around Silver, the restored train car that Mara had worked on for months. The air was cool and birds sang softly in the trees. Mara stood by the back door of her house, holding a cup of tea and looking at Silver with quiet pride. The train car looked beautiful in the sunlight, its smooth silver surface shining softly. But she knew her work was not yet finished. The outside was nearly perfect, but the heart of Silver, the soul of what she wanted to create, was still waiting to be built. After finishing her tea, Mara put on her work gloves and stepped toward the train car. She opened the door and walked inside. The air inside felt calm and warm, filled with the scent of new wood and faint traces of old metal. She looked around at the clean walls, the new windows, and the small table she had placed in one corner. Sunlight streamed through the windows, dancing across the floor like ripples of gold. It felt peaceful, but something was missing. Mara knew she wanted Silver to be more than just a pretty space. She wanted it to have meaning. She wanted people to come here and feel something deep: hope, warmth, and connection. As she looked around, she remembered the old letters and photographs she had found hidden under the floor weeks ago. They had been waiting quietly in a small box filled with forgotten stories. Mara walked to the shelf near the back of the train car, where she had kept the box safe. She opened it carefully and lifted out the letters. The paper was fragile, soft from age, and the ink had faded in some places. She sat down and began to read. The first letter was from a man named Paul. He had written it in 1934 to his wife, saying that he was traveling on this very train car to find work in another city. His words spoke of love and hope. He promised to return soon and build a better life for their family. The next letter was from a young girl named Clara, written to her friend. She wrote about how she was moving to a new town with her parents and how she would miss her friend's laughter. The handwriting was shaky, but the feelings were clear. Mara read each letter slowly, feeling the emotions of people who had lived so long ago. Some letters spoke of dreams, others of sorrow, but all of them carried a sense of life and human spirit. She felt as if the voices of those travelers were still inside the walls of silver, waiting to be heard again. As she read, she came across one letter that caught her attention. It was written in neat handwriting and signed only with the initial R. It spoke about a small act of kindness, helping an old woman on the train who was traveling alone. The writer said that the woman had told stories about her family and her past, and before she left, she gave the writer a silver coin, saying, "Keep this to remember that kindness never fades." Mara smiled softly. She checked the bottom of the box again and found a small round coin. It was old, but the silver still shone faintly. She held it in her palm, feeling warmth spread through her fingers. She decided that this coin would become the symbol of silver. It would remind everyone that kindness could survive through time. That afternoon, Mara cleaned the letters and photographs carefully. She framed them with simple wooden borders and began hanging them along the walls of the train car. Each frame held a piece of history. Each letter told a story that once lived inside this very place. As she hung them, she spoke softly, as if talking to the people from the past. "You are remembered," she whispered. "Your words still matter." Soon the walls of silver began to look like a gallery of memories. Old black and white photographs showed people smiling beside trains, families hugging, and travelers waving goodbye through windows. The letters hung neatly below each photograph, creating a story of human connection across time. When Mara stepped back to look at her work, she felt her heart fill with emotion. The train car no longer looked empty. It had become a place where voices from the past whispered gently through the air. Later that evening, Ben, the old neighbor, stopped by. He had been watching Mara's progress for months and was curious about what she had done inside. "Would you like to see the inside now?" Mara asked with a smile. "I would love to," Ben said, stepping through the door carefully. As he entered, he stopped and looked around. His eyes softened as he saw the letters and photographs on the walls. He walked slowly, reading each one. His hands trembled slightly as he touched the frame of one photo showing a group of travelers laughing on a platform. "These people," Ben said quietly, "they remind me of my grandparents. They used to travel by train all the time. My grandfather always said trains carried more than people. They carried memories." Mara smiled. "That is what I wanted to show. Every journey leaves a story behind." Ben looked at her, his eyes moist. "You have done something special here, Mara. You gave this place its soul back." His words touched her deeply. After he left, Mara sat alone inside Silver, thinking about what he said. She realized that she had started something bigger than she had planned. It was not just about restoring an old train car. It was about restoring the feeling of connection that people once had. The next day, Mara decided to add something new, a memory wall. She found a large wooden board and placed it near the entrance. On it, she wrote a sign that said, "Share your story." She left a small box of papers and pens beside it. Her idea was simple. Anyone who visited Silver could write their own message, memory, or hope and place it on the wall. She wanted the train car to hold not only stories from the past, but also voices from the present. At first, no one came. Days passed quietly. Mara continued to add small decorations, soft cushions, flower pots near the windows, and a lamp made from an old lantern she found in the scrapyard. Silver looked warm and inviting now. It glowed softly at night like a beacon of comfort. Then one evening she found her first note pinned to the wall. It was from a young boy named Adam. The note said, "I came here with my mother. I like the pictures and the old letters. When I grow up, I want to build something beautiful too." Mara smiled when she read it. Soon more notes began to appear. One woman wrote about her late father who loved trains. Another person wrote about finding peace after years of sadness. Each note carried feelings that made the walls come alive. Within weeks, Silver's memory wall was filled with messages. Some were short, others long, but all were written with heart. The train car had become a space where people could open up, remember, and feel connected. Mara often stood quietly inside, reading the messages. She would sometimes find herself in tears, not out of sadness, but because she felt the deep beauty of what she had created. The train car was no longer just an object. It was a living story, filled with voices from different times. One afternoon, while cleaning near the small corner where she had found the letters, Mara noticed something unusual. The wooden panel there sounded hollow when she tapped it. Curious, she fetched a small tool and gently removed the section of wood. Behind it, she discovered a hidden compartment she had never seen before. Inside was a small cloth bag. Her hands shook slightly as she opened it. Inside the bag was an old pocket watch and a folded piece of paper. She opened the paper and read it carefully. The note said, "To whoever finds this, thank you for keeping this train alive." It carried not just people, but dreams. May it always bring light to those who enter. The handwriting was neat but old, and there was no name. Mara looked at the pocket watch. It was silver, simple, and still ticking faintly even after all these years. She smiled, feeling her heart swell with emotion. It was as if the train car itself was sending her a message. She decided to place the watch in a glass case near the entrance, beside the silver coin. She added a small note that read, "Time remembers those who care." That evening, as the sun set, Mara sat inside Silver and watched the golden light touch every corner. The letters, the photographs, the notes from visitors, and the soft lights created a gentle glow. She felt surrounded by stories about of the past, the present, and perhaps even the future. Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees, and the flowers in the garden swayed gently. Silver stood proudly, no longer a forgotten piece of metal, but a living memory of humanity. Mara felt tears in her eyes, but they were tears of peace. She whispered softly, "You are complete, Silver. You have become what you were meant to be." But deep inside, she knew her journey was not over. Something told her that Silver's story still had more to give, not just to her, but to everyone who would come and find hope within its walls. The morning was bright and calm. A gentle breeze moved through the garden around Silver, carrying the soft scent of flowers. The sun reflected off the smooth silver surface of the train car, making it shine like a living thing. Mara stood near the back door of her house, watching it quietly. Months of hard work had passed, and Silver was finally ready. Every part of it told a story, from the polished wood inside to the framed letters and the memory wall filled with words from visitors. Today was a special day. Mara had decided to open Silver to the town. She had placed small handwritten invitations on doors and community boards. The note was simple: "Come and see what memories can become." Mara felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She wanted people to feel what she had felt during the months she worked on Silver. The peace, the connection, and the quiet beauty of forgotten things coming alive again. She spent the early morning making sure everything was perfect. She wiped the windows, adjusted the curtains, and placed fresh flowers on the small table inside. The silver coin and the old pocket watch sat together in their glass case near the entrance, shining softly under the light. When the clock struck 10, she heard footsteps outside. The first visitors arrived: Ben, her elderly neighbor, and his granddaughter, a cheerful little girl named Lila. "Good morning, Mara," Ben said with a warm smile. "We came early because I couldn't wait any longer." Mara smiled back. "Good morning, Ben. I'm glad you came. You were here from the start, so you should see it first." Ben stepped up the small wooden stairs leading to the train car's door. As he entered, his eyes widened. The golden light from the lamps inside reflected on his face. He looked around at the photographs, the letters, and the hundreds of small notes pinned to the memory wall. "It feels alive," Ben whispered, "like it remembers every person who ever passed through." Lila walked around curiously, touching the smooth wooden walls. "It smells like stories," she said in her soft voice. Mara smiled. "That's because every corner here holds one." More people started arriving, families, children, and older townsfolk who had heard about Mara's project, but had never believed it would become something special. They walked through the garden path, admiring the flowers and the shining metal of Silver. Some of them stopped to take pictures, while others simply stood in silence, surprised by how beautiful it looked. Inside, Mara guided small groups of visitors, telling them the story of the train car, how she found it, how it was once forgotten, and how she brought it back to life. She showed them the letters and the photographs, explaining where she found them and what they said. Every story she told made the people listen more closely. When she spoke about the letter written by the man named Paul, many visitors grew quiet. Some even wiped their eyes as she read his words about love and hope. When she showed them the silver coin and the pocket watch, they listened with deep emotion. The message on the old note: May it always bring light to those who enter, seemed to touch everyone's heart. Outside, more people gathered. The sound of soft laughter and quiet conversation filled the garden. Children played near the flowers and adults stood near the fence, talking about how they remembered taking trains when they were younger. It felt like the whole town had come together for the first time in years. As the day went on, visitors began leaving their own messages on the memory wall. The box of paper and pens quickly emptied as people wrote down their thoughts. Some wrote about their families. Others wrote about dreams, forgiveness, or gratitude. Every message added another layer of life to Silver. By afternoon, the train car was full of people. Some sat quietly on the chairs Mara had placed near the windows, reading letters. Others stood near the shelves, looking at the jars of old coins and stones she had found. The warm glow of the lamps and the smell of fresh flowers created a peaceful atmosphere. Ben sat near the window, looking out at the crowd. "You have changed this town, Mara," he said softly. People needed something to remind them of what truly matters. Mara looked at him with a gentle smile. "I think Silver did that. I just helped it speak again." As the sun began to set, the visitors slowly left, but many stayed near the fence, watching the golden light touch the roof of the train car. The reflection made it look like it was glowing from within. A few children asked if they could come back again. Mara promised they could visit any time. When evening came and the last visitors left, Mara sat inside Silver, surrounded by the quiet hum of the night. The memory wall was now covered with dozens of new notes. She walked to it and began to read them one by one. "I came here to see an old train car," one note said, "but I found hope instead." Another said, "This place reminded me that love never fades. Thank you, Mara." Each message filled her heart with warmth. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were tears of happiness. The stories from the past had now blended with the voices of the present. Silver had become what she dreamed it would be, a bridge between generations. After some time, Mara heard a gentle knock at the door. When she opened it, she saw a young man standing there. He looked about 20 years old and carried a small leather bag. "Are you the one who restored this train car?" he asked politely. "Yes," Mara replied. "Come in." He stepped inside, looking around quietly. "My name is Daniel," he said. "My grandfather used to talk about a train just like this one. He said he met my grandmother on it during a long journey in 1935. He always said that the train was magic because it brought them together. When I saw the pictures in the newspaper about this place, I felt like I had to come." Mara's eyes widened. "Do you know if this could be the same train?" Daniel nodded slowly. "It might be. My grandfather mentioned that the train number was 47. Mara smiled. "That is Silver's number. It's written on a tag near the back wall." Daniel walked to the wall and touched the small metal tag gently. His eyes filled with emotion. He was right. This is the one. He always said that if anyone ever found it, they should know it carried love. Mara felt her heart beat faster. She guided Daniel to the wall where she had placed the photographs and letters. When he saw them, he stopped suddenly. His eyes focused on one photograph, a young couple standing beside the train, smiling at each other. "That is them," he whispered. "That is my grandfather and grandmother." Mara covered her mouth in surprise. "Then this is your family's story." Daniel nodded. He looked around slowly, taking in every part of Silver. The letters, the lights, the flowers, the notes. "You brought their story back to life," he said softly. "They would have loved this." He took a small object out of his bag, a tiny photo frame with a picture of his grandparents in their later years. "Would it be all right if I left this here?" he asked. Mara smiled warmly. "Of course. It belongs here." Daniel placed the photo on a shelf near the entrance beside the pocket watch. Then he stood silently for a moment before leaving. After he was gone, Mara sat in the quiet again. She looked at the new photo and felt something shift in her heart. The past and the present had finally touched in a way that felt real and pure. Outside, the moon rose, casting a soft silver glow over the train car. The lamps inside flickered gently and the air was filled with peace. Mara walked outside and looked at Silver from a distance. It looked alive and almost like it was breathing, glowing softly with the light of all the stories it now carried. She thought about how it had all started. One day in a scrapyard, with a rusty old train car that everyone thought was worthless. Now it had become a place that carried memories, hope, and love. As she stood in the garden, Ben joined her again. He looked at Silver and said, You see, Mara, it was never just a train car. It was waiting for you all along. Mara nodded, her eyes shining. Maybe it was. Or maybe we were both waiting for each other. Ben smiled. Whatever it was, you gave this place back its heart. And in doing so, you gave this town one too. They stood there quietly, watching the lights from the train car flicker softly in the night. The sound of crickets filled the air, and the moonlight touched the garden like a gentle hand. For the first time, Mara felt a deep sense of peace. She had done what she set out to do. She had turned something broken into something beautiful. Silver had become more than a piece of history. It had become a home for human emotion. A reminder that even forgotten things could shine again. As she turned to go inside her house, she looked back once more. The silver coin, the letters, the pocket watch, and now the photograph, all of them told one story. That love and kindness never fade, no matter how much time passes. The next morning began quietly. A soft mist covered the garden, and dew sparkled on the flowers near Silver. The air felt calm, but something about it carried a feeling of new beginnings. Mara walked outside holding a cup of tea, her eyes resting on the train car. She could hardly believe how much had changed in 1 year. What had once been a forgotten piece of metal was now a living memory. People from nearby towns had started visiting every weekend. They came to see Silver, to walk through its narrow halls and to leave behind their own stories. Mara had begun keeping a guest book, and it was already filled with hundreds of names and messages. That morning, as she unlocked the door to Silver, she saw a small envelope placed neatly on the step. It had no name, only one word written in soft handwriting: "Thank you." Mara picked it up, opened it carefully, and read the note inside. "I came here last month with my mother. She was very sick. She sat near the window and said this place made her heart feel light. She passed away last week, but I wanted you to know her last smile happened here. Thank you for giving her peace." Mara held the note to her chest, feeling her eyes fill with tears. She stood silently for a moment, looking around at the quiet garden. The morning sunlight fell on Silver's windows, and the light seemed to shimmer like gentle waves. She went inside, placed the note on the memory wall, and whispered, "You gave her peace, Silver. You did that." Later that week, a journalist from a popular magazine visited the town. His name was Ron, a kind man with sharp eyes and a calm voice. He had heard about the mysterious train car that made people cry and wanted to see it for himself. When he met Mara, he said, "People are talking about this place everywhere. They say it changes them. I want to understand why." Mara smiled and opened the train car door. "Then step inside. Silver will show you." He entered, notebook in hand, but soon forgot about writing. As he walked through the train, his steps slowed. He read the letters, touched the smooth wooden walls, and saw the photographs. He stopped in front of the photo of Daniel's grandparents and the pocket watch beside it. "This is real history," he whispered. Mara nodded. "It is more than history. It is humanity. Every person who came here left a piece of their heart behind. Silver holds all of it." When Ron left, his eyes were soft with emotion. 2 weeks later, his article appeared in the magazine. The headline read, "The Woman Who Turned a Rusty Train Car into a Sanctuary of Hope." The story spread quickly. People across the country read about Silver. Some wrote letters to Mara. Others sent small gifts or photos from their own lives. A few even shared how they had found strength after losing someone dear. One letter said, "You reminded me that memories are not meant to fade. They are meant to guide us forward." Within months, visitors started arriving from faraway cities. Some came by train, others by car, but all came with hearts full of curiosity and warmth. The small town began to change too. Local shops placed small signs saying, "Welcome visitors of Silver." Children painted pictures of trains and hung them in the community hall. Even Ben, who once thought the project was just a dream, now became the unofficial storyteller of the place. He would stand outside Silver and tell visitors how it all began, how a woman saw beauty in rust and turned it into light. One afternoon, Mara received a letter from a museum in the capital city. They wanted to host an exhibition about Silver and the way it had touched lives. They asked her if she would bring some of the letters, photographs, and maybe even a small section of the train car to display. At first, Mara hesitated. "Silver belongs here," she said to herself. "This is its home." But as days passed, she began to think differently. Maybe sharing Silver's story with the world could help others create something similar, a place for healing and connection. So, she agreed. The museum arranged to build a special room called the Hall of Silver. They promised to keep every detail true to the original. Mara carefully chose a few letters, the pocket watch, the silver coin, and a small wooden bench from inside the car. She labeled each one with care and packed them gently. When she arrived at the museum for the opening ceremony, she was surprised to see how many people had gathered. There were families, journalists, students, and even artists who had been inspired by Silver's story. As she walked into the exhibit hall, her eyes widened. The room was glowing with soft light. The letters were displayed behind glass, the photographs arranged in gentle curves like a timeline of hope. In the center stood the small bench with the plaque that read, "Rest here. Remember love." When the museum director invited her to speak, Mara stood quietly for a moment before saying, "When I found that rusty train car, I only saw a story waiting to be told. I never imagined it would tell its own story back to me. Silver reminded me that even things forgotten can carry life again. All it takes is care, patience, and love." Her words touched everyone in the hall. Some clapped softly. Others simply nodded with tears in their eyes. After the event, many people came to speak to her. One young woman said, "I want to restore my grandmother's old shop. You've shown me that things can live again." Another man said, "I'm going to turn an old bus into a mobile library. You gave me the courage." Mara realized then that Silver's story had become much bigger than herself. It had started as a dream but turned into a wave of kindness moving through people's lives. Months passed again. Back in her small town, Silver still stood in her garden, shining softly under the sun. The visitors continued to come, though not as many as before. For Mara, that was perfect. She liked when the train was quiet, filled with soft footsteps and gentle voices. One evening, as the sky turned golden, she received a call from Daniel, the young man whose grandparents had once met on the train. "Mara," he said warmly, "I wanted to tell you something. My wife and I are expecting a baby. We decided to name her Hope, and when she grows up, I will bring her to Silver and tell her the story of where love began." Mara's heart swelled with happiness. "That's beautiful, Daniel," she said softly. "Your grandparents would be proud." After she ended the call, she walked outside again. The garden was calm, filled with the sound of evening birds. The silver light of the moon began to rise, touching the roof of the train. She went inside Silver one more time that night. The lamps glowed gently. The air smelled of old paper, flowers, and something peaceful that words could never describe. She walked to the memory wall, reading the newest notes people had left. One said, "This place gave me the strength to forgive." Another read, "I came broken, but I am leaving whole." As she read, she felt a soft breeze move through the train, almost like a whisper. It carried warmth, and she smiled. "You're still alive, Silver," she said quietly, "and you always will be." She sat on the bench near the window, looking out at the stars. The moonlight streamed through the glass, falling across her face. She thought of everything that had happened. The first day she saw the rusty metal, the nights she spent working alone, the people who came and left their stories, and the way love had traveled through it all. Mara realized something important. The train car had not only changed the town, it had changed her. She was no longer just the woman who bought an old train car. She had become the keeper of countless memories, a quiet guardian of hope. As she sat there, she whispered to herself, "It was never about building something beautiful. It was about listening to what was already there." Outside, the stars grew brighter. The wind moved gently through the flowers. The silver metal of the train shimmered like a living thing under the night sky. Years later, when Mara had grown older, Silver remained. The town took care of it, repainting the garden fences and cleaning the path that led to the door. Visitors still came, some new, some returning after many years. The guest book grew thicker, filled with stories of people who found comfort, peace, and love inside those shining walls. A plaque was placed near the entrance. With simple words, "This place was built from memory and love. May everyone who enters find light again." Children who visited often asked, "Who was Mara?" And their parents would tell them, "She was the one who saw hope in something forgotten." And so, her story lived on, not in fame or riches, but in the quiet hearts of those who visited Silver. On warm evenings, when the sun set and the light touched the silver walls, Some said they could hear a soft humming inside, like the whisper of an old train starting its journey again. It was as if Silver itself was alive, carrying all those stories together, still moving, still shining, still full of love.